This is where my father died. It happened May 1st, 2023. It's where my story as a person and as a filmmaker changed forever. I had just moved back with my parents when I turned 26. I was going through the start of a divorce, and the day that I moved in with my parents, they announced their divorce as well. I spent most of my time just laying in bed, talking to my girlfriend, who was long distance at the time, and drinking the Sprecher root beer. My mom had bought a bunch of those, so I drank those all the time. Things were pretty weird, honestly, that year. My parents were both kind of vying for my love a little bit. They were both trying to be a bigger presence in my life, especially my dad, who hadn't been such a big presence in my life. We would go out sometimes for dinner or lunch, and we would hang out and just talk about life. And sometimes he'd even ask me for advice because his life was kind of a mess at the time, and he was trying to figure things out. And in those talks, we kind of came up with the idea of making a feature film, and the father's kind of let down the son, and he's trying to reconnect with him after all these years. And it's this kind of crime story, so we wanted to make this kind of unique tale together, and it kind of reflected our lives a little bit in terms of I think how my dad felt about my relationship with him. I had vented to him about how I was really feeling stuck with my collaborations and my YouTube channel and not feeling like everything was going in the direction I wanted to go to. And at the conclusion of that talk, he did tell me that he felt like young men specifically are having a hard time in the world, and they're really struggling with their mental health, and he wanted to make a podcast about how young men and their mental health were affected in this modern era. My dad was a part of a generation of men who kind of always stigmatized mental health. They were never really a generation that validated it in any way. Ever since I was a kid, I kind of noticed this intense sadness in his eyes. In his final weeks, I started to notice how much he was becoming paranoid, anxious. He seemed malnourished and sickly. And when he called me for that final time, he talked to me, and we were talking about everything that had happened, and he had apologized for so many things that he had felt he had done wrong to me. And we said that we loved each other. And right at the end of that call, I told him that I thought he needed to go to the hospital. And he told me, "Danny, if I'm still feeling bad on Monday, I'll go in on Monday." So May 1st, a Monday, 2023 comes around, and that's the day that my father passed away. Around 7 or 8 o'clock that night, I got a call on my girlfriend's phone from my mom because my phone was dead. And she was screaming and crying and could barely be understood. And she started to explain exactly what happened. There was a van that my dad had drove in. He had used a pistol that he had had, and the cops had said he had ended his life. And within that one moment, I had lost my job, I had lost my father, I had lost my film that I made with him. Everything, my whole life in the way that I had lived it, was completely destroyed in 1 second. I could bore you with the details of exactly what happened that first week, but it was mostly just a lot of pain and crying and feeling very depressed. But a few months later, I started to become even more depressed, to the point where I felt like my sanity and my ability to survive wasn't guaranteed. I was becoming more erratic. I couldn't really control myself. And I was driving one day, and I started to think I should crash my car. So I called my mom, and I told her that I needed to go to the mental hospital. But I didn't have any money to go because I had just started a new job after being unemployed for a few months. So I ended up going. My mom helped me out, and what ended up happening was they took everything from me. They took my phone, they took my social media. I wasn't really able to communicate with any of my family members other than in brief little snippets when I would talk on this little wired phone. And it gave me time to sit there, and it gave me time to think. And what it really did was give me time to feel anger. I was angry at my father for what he had done to me. I was angry at my father from taking away my life, taking away the things that I had built, the things that I had done with him, and I had no control. But I was most angry in that moment when I was sitting there that the film, that beautiful film we had worked on, couldn't be completed. There was no way to complete it, and I had all this spectacular footage. The only memory I really had of my dad, because my dad didn't really take that many photos, and I couldn't even finish the movie. I couldn't even finish it, and it angered me so much. And I sat there and I thought, I'm gonna make that movie and I'm gonna finish it, and I'm gonna do something that's gonna make it art, because that's the only way I'm gonna survive this, is I need to give myself some sort of project, some sort of thing to focus on. My brother is also a filmmaker, and he's actually a really great and accomplished wedding videographer. And he wanted to do a very peculiar thing, which was he wanted the funeral ceremony filmed because he wanted some sort of token of the event that had happened. So he got the best videographers in Chicago in order to film it. So we had all this footage. So I was combing through hard drives of footage of just random stuff. And I landed on this moment and I paused. And what I ended up seeing was the thing that changed everything. See, my brother and I had a very close relationship when we were kids, but as we grew up, that relationship became less close. And it only was after about 10 years of not really being super close with each other that when my dad passed away, we got a lot closer. And in that moment that I paused, I saw me and my brother hugging. And in that moment, I knew that that was the story. The story wasn't going to be a story about fathers and sons. There was no way to finish that story. The story was going to be about perseverance and of two brothers putting aside their differences to try to come together after the loss of their dad. And that's what made the movie work again. And suddenly I had all this passion and this vigor for life again because I knew exactly what I needed to do and I had a mission. I want to leave you with a message here, which is death is a part of life. Losing is a part of life. I've lost more in the last 4 years than anyone should have to lose in their lifetime. I lost my daughter, I lost my dad, I lost my grandpa, I lost my home, I lost my car, I got divorced, I broke up with my girlfriend, got back with my girlfriend, but I lost a lot of things. But sometimes you gotta be kind of like a boxer, you know? And boxers, they take a lot of punches, you know, on the ropes. And there's two types of people. There are people who can take those punches, and those are the people who are gonna get knocked down and they're not gonna come back. My dad used to read this book when I was a kid called Never Die Easy by Walter Payton. And it's about his story of him as he's about to die. It's an autobiography. And I read that book as a kid, and that always was a value instilled by my father, which is never give up, never die easy. And so I'm gonna always be dancing in that ring, dancing like that boxer, taking those punches, taking those hits. No matter how many times I get hit, thrown, slammed to the ground, I'm gonna get back up. And I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna succeed. I'm never gonna die easy, okay?